Why is depopulating the planet, over time naturally, generally frowned upon? Part of the problem you'd have is the growth obligations our society is structured around. Just look at elder care for example. There's only so many young people for every old person. You need to keep adding more young people to keep that ratio relatively balanced. But if you stop having new kids, that system collapses quickly. Your workforce also rapidly ages as labor becomes prohibitively expensive. Usually your best bet for what you're shooting for is very mild growth. Because our stock market and government programs like Social Security are almost a Ponzi scheme. That requires growth to function. A declining population is good for the environment, but it results in a population that has fewer young people supporting an aging population. I came across some research that shows that as soon as birth control becomes easily available to women, birth rates tend to decline drastically. Can't remember where I read it, though, and I'm not about to try to find it. Also, birth rates are declining in most developed countries. Even China is about to deal with this issues. As North America, most of Europe, Korea, and Japan are now. A shrinking population can play havoc on a society. Abandoned houses, businesses, factories, less tax revenue, everything start to fall into disrepair. Many older adults, and not enough working people to pay into pensions to take care of them. So, yeah, a shrinking population will definitely help with the environmental issues. It's the societal issues that are maybe difficult to deal with. How? I don't think many people would oppose a proposal to increase education funding or put in play restrictions on child marriage, both of which decrease birth rates by delaying early childbearing at the cost of the parents' economic opportunities. When depopulating means eugenics or letting people die needlessly, then, sure, you get pushback because those are bad things. One reason it doesn't sit well with me is that the people who advocate for depopulation seem to have a disdain for humanity. They look at people as a problem to be reduced, and they want to make a bunch of other changes that would make regular people's lives worse. And I'm people, so it kind of feels like a veiled threat. The irony is that we naturally have fewer children the richer we get, which is why the entire West is below replacement birth rates. If they said, let's make everybody in poor countries richer and more self-sufficient so there aren't as many people to feed, I'd get behind that. If they tried to solve population limiting problems, like food and energy, in constructive and non-authoritarian ways, and let the population top out naturally, we'd all be happier. Another thing is that people have been worried about overpopulation since we were around 1 billion. We keep innovating new ways to feed more people than we thought possible. So it seems defeatist to think that enough educated people wouldn't be able to solve our population problems faster than the population grows. How are you gonna convince some people to not have a child just so other people's children can have it better? Who gets to have children or not? As a big-time environmentalist and activist, I agree that human growth and population is the root of the problem. However, as someone who also values justice, I'd point out that there are lots of historical examples of people who tried to do exactly what you're saying to horrific effect. Check out this podcast episode about the Ford and Rockefeller Foundations who teamed up in the 60s and 70s to tackle this specific problem. It started with the thoughts we are sharing now but became, in essence, some rich white guys creating a major forced sterilization program for India. Many people had no idea they were even sterilized and had no choice. It was hideous. If it were able to be accomplished humanely and voluntarily, I think it would be great. But messing around with the most basic drive that organic creatures have, the drive to procreate, can be disastrous. I teach environmental science, and a huge part of the course is population growth. What we see now in societies that have negative population growth is the following. 1. Less tax revenue for government because there are less workers in that society. This isn't going to only affect economic growth, but it will also lead to a reduction in services that the government can offer its populace. Also, less workers in society means less goods being manufactured and, more important, less being purchased. These two are key to capitalistic growth. 2. Lack of care for the elderly. Usually the younger generation will assist with this. However, when there is no younger generation, this becomes the government's responsibility. At that point, the government cannot help due to what was discussed in number 1 above. 3. Weakened military power. The military is made up of people 1835. Less of those people simply means less soldiers. Less soldiers means weaker military. Capitalism has the same ethos as the cancer cell. Massive growth up until it kills the thing it's been living off of. The depopulation will happen rapidly, not slowly. Population issues aren't due to children. It's from old people. People are living a lot longer and we have an aging population. Only thing that fewer babies would achieve would be to skew the next generation's ages further. If some resource shortage on Earth limits human population, then that will happen naturally. Eventually. More likely is that technology and innovation will overcome that. Preemptively trying to solve theoretical problems that don't exist yet is just an excuse for fascist tyrants to rule over fellow humans now. Take a second and think about who would dictate who gets to have less kids. Does everyone have an equal say? Does the person from Nigeria have the same vote as the person from Sweden? The poor person the same as the rich one? What this sort of policy always leads to is the right to reproduce, which is essentially eugenics and borderline genocidal. One of the main issues in countries like Japan or South Korea is that there are way too few kids. They are heading headfirst into generational demographic collapse because there will be too few workers. Very good points have been mentioned, but I'll sum up my view on it. So it basically comes down to human rights issues. Emo. Because of. For reference, when China had its one-child policy, the state of the economy started to collapse. The retirement system is built on the young generation paying the benefits of the current retirees, getting the benefits through taxes. Less population and less taxes coming in for that purpose, but other purposes too. Everyone agrees that the planet can only support so many humans if there is to be any room for other species of animals. But no one agrees on who should make any sacrifices to get the planet to the population the planet can support. The implication that you can choose between having a kid and bettering your society is not a good one. How do you decide who can and can't have kids? How many can they have? What happens when someone inevitably gets pregnant when they're not supposed to? Forced abortions? It's not feasible or ethical to organize something like this. All we could do is encourage people to have less children. We do encourage people to have fewer babies. No educated person will tell you reducing the number of births in most places on Earth is a bad thing. I mean, it's not like China didn't try. And the consequences were quite dreadful. All in all, we're just animals with a desire to procreate and prosper. Newest estimates do already count for decrease in population after 2050. People who are wealthy and educated have less children, and overall more people are becoming more wealthy and educated. So why force it? Too fast depopulation will give too much problems. So we just have to wait for the natural decline.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.